Hello everyone, this is Blinder Guppy. In this video, I'm going to recreate this sci-fi ramp model, which I posted in Twitter and Instagram. So, I created this model using Creative Flow and Random Flow, the base model, and the railing mainly from Creative Flow, and the rest with the randomized objects are from Random Flow. So, here we have the paneling, and underneath is a bunch of shapes. So these shapes, these random shapes are meant to make it look like exposed mechanism underneath the ramp, and at certain ranges increase the realistic value or the realism of the model. So if we render this, so the exposed mechanism plus the cables and also the textures and the introduction of shadows. So let's just hide some of the more primitive nature of the shapes underneath the ramp. But combined, you can see that they are, so it looks good. Okay, so let's start. And let's create a new file, general, and reactivate this screencast. Okay, so we're going to start with a circle and 64 vertices, or 64 times 2. Okay, F to create a face from that, and Control Fs, Control F, then S to solidify faces, and F9 to bring up the undo menu and increase the value. Let's go to solidify to make sure that the faces are not inverted, or the normals are not inverted. Press Alt N and recalculate outside. So if we create a randomized panel here, so it's showing up on the outside, so that's correct. But if the normals are flipped, and if you use the random panels, it's showing up on the inside. So that means that your normals are flipped. So Alt N and recalculate outside. Okay. Can't remember the design of the first of our original model. So let's just, okay, I'm eventually going to have to reestablish the mirror, but this time, not yet. And this is for the inner mechanism right here. And we're going to build the handrail first on this part. Shift D and separate by selection. Select all the edges and Control Shift X in Creative Flow. Edges to curve and get rid of the original object and decrease the depth. So if the redo panel disappears after you initiate another action, you can still affect the width or the radius of the curve by selecting all the vertices, then pressing Alt S. Okay, and now we're going to create let's establish the mirror for this one. So usually I do it like this with the 3D widget like that. So XY. So the one with the letters are positive, and the one without are negative. So positive x, positive negative x, positive z, negative z. At the back, negative y, and going to the front to the viewport is positive y. Okay, so I'm going to use this area here, or this area here. XY, not Z, just the XY. Okay, and select this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Control Shift plus. Okay, Control Shift plus. No single next item found. Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And raise them up or extrude them out. Oops. Okay. Not that. This one. So it lines up to the circle here. So I didn't delete this because I needed to actually serve as a guide for this. And then just select these edges, press X and then E. Okay. And select these poles, press P to separate by selection. And let's get rid of the mirror by applying the mesh. So on the part where the symmetry line is an edge, it won't create doubles when you apply the mesh, when you convert the curve to a mesh later on. Okay, so let's extras, edge the curve object, and Alt S, and scale it upwards to make it penetrate the handrail and this mesh right here, and auto smooth. So I'm going to save this first, RAM 01, just in case of a crash, so I can open it again and continue. Shall we get rid of this? Not yet. Okay. Press B, so that's inset. There we go. So we're going to create the grills. Okay. So place the 3D cursor on this vert here. Cursor selected, and add a plane. So that will be created on the point of the on the location of the 3D cursor. Raise it up a bit, and subdivide. Okay, subdivide WS F9. Increase the number of cuts. So you can't go past 10 because this is the soft maximum. To go past this, you need to just enter a higher value, and then you can. Oh, there's a limit here again, 21. Okay, so 51. Is that it? I think this is it. And Control E. After the subdivision, Control E and subdivide. And bring the iterations back to 1 to create diamond shape like that. So we're going to insert again. And now to insert the faces individually, press I again. Okay. Now with those faces selected, X, F. So it deletes those highlighted faces, XF. Creates the holes. So I think this is not small enough. WS and subdivide. There we go. I. Okay. So we need to cut the geometry. Go to edit mode, draw cuts, and Shift C, I think. Shift C, yeah. Basically, the marker gets locked on the position of the 3D cursor. Then Shift G to lock the draw shape. We're going to use number 3 for the circle. And then Shift G to lock it on the position of the marker. Now let's increase the resolution of this. Resolution is Control AD. Okay, 64 or 128. There we go. And cut it somewhere like near the handrails. Press space to confirm. And then press 3 to go to face selection mode. There we go. So selected the faces. Now Control I to invert the selection. And then XF. So we now have a circular type of um, we now made a circular cut. It's a bit rough on the edges, but you can also use shader for this. I think Voronoi could be used for the diamond shaped, and then use an alpha for that. And we're going to add thickness to this. Draw modifiers, use solidify, and adjust the solidify value. There we go. So with the help of the lighting and the shader, we're not gonna detail this part anymore. It's going to be just a bunch of displayed as a shadow area or a dark area underneath the mesh. Okay, let's create more subdivision. We're going to use random panels for this part, and then a bunch of other random operators for this part to create the illusion of the exposed mechanism. So in set I disable the individual faces toggle earlier. So you can do this like that, or you can, where's the extract? Extract faces, press limited dissolve, and then limited dissolve X limited dissolve 2.5 or 1 degree. Now keeps the boundary verts intact. Control Shift Q and grid project per face. And cuts soft maximum. So just enter a value, higher value to make it higher than that. So you can use this. You can use grid. You can gridify the geometry to create square quads on the on most of the geometry, and for the random operators to work. However, the ingons on the outer edges will not be subdivided because the subdivision script in Python only works with quads and tries. So let's try this geometry, and also let's lower the resolution because that's too much. So probably this, and let's try this. And in order to also use a fewer geometry, you can also make use of the mirror. Okay, so that's how the square topology works. So remember that the randomization result is greatly affected by geometry. So, but we're going to use the circle anyway. This circular formation quads. So now let's add a few more geometry here. Edge loop here because we're going to use the random panels. I select these faces. By the way, the operators work in edit mode. You can see me go to object mode because initially the operators do not work in object mode, so I get used to that. So, but you can make it work in edit mode. Most of the random operators will do that, or the ones dealing with geometry. Okay, so random animation. Okay, so the ones that are exposed in edit mode will work in this mode. So tabbing to object mode, you can see that you can see vertex color and animation there. Okay. Okay, random panels. So play around with the values with lower subdivision, because if you increase this and you play around with the values, it's going to process the value change for that property and also reprocess the subdivision again. So that's how the script works. So that's why it's slow on higher subdivision. Everything's from in the script gets repeated again if you modify just one of the properties. Okay, so for adjusting properties like inset or depth, play around with the values at lower subdivision until you get the right one. Then deal with the subdivision when you have to randomize the design using the seeds. Okay, depth, and we also have the epicenter. So I'm using control middle mouse button to affect the values instead of dragging it. So control middle mouse up increases the value. Control middle mouse down decreases the value. So up and down, that means rolling it up and rolling it down. Okay. Until the symmetry line disappears. There we go. And I'm going to play around with the panel size and choose something that is cool. So if you start to see banding, because the smooth algorithm using the subdivision script in Python is not the same as the subdivision modifier. If you increase the subdivision enough on a curved surface like this cylinder here, you can see banding like that. So you on a purely cylindrical object you can use this, but when it comes to something that has these curves like angles like this, sharp angles like this, it won't work that well. You can see it got rid of the banding, but in the sharp angles we have this protrusion or inflation. So we need another thing to get rid of that. So 0. So we can use limited dissolve to actually 1 degree to melt the topology that's resulting in the banding. However, it will result in this. Okay, so For purely angular objects, it can be easily the topology can be easily repaired using quad slice or grid project at some instances in some instances, but for curved surfaces like this that turn on their plane, it's kind of hard for the uh, quad slice to do that. But there are ways to, of course, fix this manually. That and quad slice per phase, so you have to do it per phase because it cuts on a straight line, so you have to do it per phase. But it is doable. Okay, so let's go back to the design. So I'm going to look for something that catches my eye. Okay, so when you're trying to follow this tutorial, you may not get if you may not get the same result that I have because this is of course random results. Don't worry about it though. Hey, where's my the important thing here is that you understand the workflow so that you can experiment on different settings yourself. So it's not about following exactly what I do. It's understanding the workflow. Let's introduce a bit of a triangulation. That's zero too much, probably. So I'm taking my time. I usually take my time to select the ones that I need. If I can find it using, by the way, walk and radial is, I think this is uh, recursive and the other thing in your version. This is a new version thing, but it's going to be the same as the first one, the first mode, and we have also the radial. So if I can find it in walk, I will do it using radial. But I think the one that I got and that I've lost is legit. Also, when dragging this, you can press shift to make it slower, or control then drag to snap it to 10 degree at 10% increments. 10 increments. 10% increments. I've lost the pattern. I found the one that I liked, but when I switched it to radial, it disappeared. Okay, so let's just use this. And probably increase the effective width. Come on. There we go. Yes. We can add more later on. So for this part, I'm not sure I'm going to use random loop. Okay, let's use random loop. And using tree loop objects. Okay. Control C and paste it on the other properties. So we're going to use percentage here. So the percentage is rather sensitive. So you don't actually see me use 40% or something like that. Just rarely. So mostly I use maximum would be 20. Minimum would be 1. Okay, so let's include this part also. Here we go. So that looks good. It's pretty much okay. That looks good. In the new update as well, a bunch of new settings like simple view and reset random loops and set faces to vertex group. So I'm going to explain this before I pass the updates. But with simple view, some properties that are less used will be hidden to make the some of the radio panels smaller. Okay. Now we're going to, and also this one here, face limit, face select limit. So essentially, if you used high subdivision on an earlier topology or topology, once you select 50 or over that, it will, and you use the operator, it will reset the subdivision will reset to 0 to avoid you using the previous high amount, so to avoid freezing or crashing Blender. Okay, so that's another. Let's play with the. So some people are saying that they can't get the same result that I have. So as I said before, understand the workflow and use the workflow and generate your own result. Okay, do not follow my stuff step by step because we are dealing with random values. Okay, so I'm going to actually create some or additive details for the other parts to supplement the baseness of this topology. So why is it not okay? So it needs those Control T, Alt J, and then so I'm creating uh quad topology in because like I said the topology the operators, the random operators only works with quad resolution, quad or tri faces. So just some basic qualification technique right there. Control T to triangulate, then Control J to quadify. You can press F9 in the quadify, Control J, or yeah, Control J. No, so Control D, Alt J, Alt J. Control T to triangulate, Alt J to quadify. So Alt J, you can to make it qualify on every um instance of triangulation, set it to maximum 180 degrees. Then that. Good thing we're using. Okay, where's the what? There we go. Oh, there's another one. Okay. Selecting the faces here, 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 here. Oh, oh my god, what's this? Doesn't matter. I'm pressing Q and then link flat faces. Increase the sharpness to 15 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to use the Control C, paste it on the other. Okay, the hint of mechanism. So don't forget that. So if you read the video file, don't. There's another workflow. The add-on is mostly designed for concept artwork, and there is another workflow if you want to make your stuff uh work on production settings. Okay, so it depends on your experience, really. I wonder if it's too small. Yeah, I think it's linked flat faces. You can also play around with the size of the island, the frequency, the size of the islands, and also uh, the island population, and also the size of the islands. You can play around with these settings to get the look that you want. So if you have overpaint skills, then this add-on will really uh, be your best friend. I don't have any overpaint skills, so I just script and model. But I do enjoy creating procedural shaders. So why didn't it? Okay, so I think that's sufficient. Also, if the mesh is sufficient, hidden, some of the faces are hidden. I press Alt A before I select any faces to make sure that I have selected any other faces in the areas that are covered. So even if this part here exposed, this exposed part here has no selected faces, I just to make sure I deselect everything, Alt A to deselect everything. Then I start selecting something for the operator. So you don't have random cells yet, so I'm going to use other operators that can serve its function. Oh, that's not it. Max. And there we go. Let's increase the subdivision slowly and use number instead of percentage. Size mode. There we go. File size 10. And Then right here. Okay, and let's play around with the look. So the deal is it kind of looks like a bunch of antenna spikes or antenna spikes up, pointing down, 0 on the depth. Let's use 1.5, or if things becomes too slow for the property value change, dragging or using control middle mouse button, otherwise you can just manually enter the value. So the script doesn't have to go with 0.01, 0.02, 0.03 change. That's what happens when you drag the values. The script will operate on all those dragged values one at a time. There we go. So I can't do anything. So I can't do anything for this one here. So I'm going to just modify it manually. Okay, so that's uh kind of looks like a bunch of antennas poking around. Let's try and randomize scatter bunch of small cubes, see how it looks. 50, and the scale, modify the scale seed. Okay, that looks good. Um, and now let's create the cables. So the cables needs to be so in the original, all the cables that are hanging are identical because the faces I used is using mirror modifier. But in this case, let's try to make them different on each part. So to do that, I'm going to use select the circle from underneath all that, and probably gonna use extract circle, shift Q, extract faces, press X for the X-ray, shift as you click to select more, and then enter. Shift H. So this is not using any mirror geometry. So let's delete this part. So we only need to make the cable show up on this area right here. Delete this as well, XF, and separation to make each part different. Separate the faces into four separate parts. Okay, Alt H, and then select the extract proxy. Anything created using the extract operators is going to be named uh, extract proxy. So for the newcomers, with all these overlapping objects, you can select a particular object inside all these overlapping objects using Alt Alt right mouse button on my controls. Maybe in yours, if you're doing something weird with yours, Alt left mouse button, but essentially Alt right mouse button as default, and it will show you all the objects underneath the mouse cursor. So you can see here. Okay. So we're going to reselect the extract proxy like that and select every face. And let's go to random cables and use catenary. Okay, so now they're okay. Now they're okay. Each island is actually connecting to another island. So let's just limit their origin to their own particular island. So click this. Oh, did it do it? No. Okay, so catenary. Oh, okay. Um, we're supposed to do it. I need to see what I'm doing though. So I know a solution for this. Um, viewport visibility in front. Okay, so Alt H. So you can see it. I think it's also here. So view, not, it's not here. So it's here in the properties tab. So this is the properties and go to object properties and in the viewport display, click in front. Okay. So what we need to do, select the geometry. Select this island first. So I can properly gauge the length or how far the catenary reaches the ground, tries to reach the ground. Nani. Okay, so like that. Let's affect the radius. Where the radius at? There we go. The radius of the bevel or the thickness of the wire is called bevel. And bevel could also mean other things in Blender. So be mindful of that. Cable amount 100. Control the slack. Ooh, ooh, slack cables. So the cable amount property will let you decide the approximate amount of cables to be produced. It's not gonna be 50 exactly all the time because of the conditions of the geometry and the way the script works. Okay, this one again. And I think we're just basically going to press this. All the settings have been fixed. We're just gonna press the origin seed to create another variation for this part. And then select another island. Go to object mode. So with the absence of an OK button for these kinds of menu, you can use the enumerator type properties instead. So this will serve as your OK button. And also Manipulating the numerical properties will also serve as an OK button, because if you press any of this, the changes will be live. Okay, so that's it. Now, okay, let's change the there we go, and let's let's delete this because we don't need it anymore. Okay, so we have the cables and all that stuff. You can also try and add flanges and all that stuff. Should we add? No. Okay, so okay, I'm going to try the shader. I'm going to steal the shader from the original file. So append ramp and uh material ramp. I named it ramp so I can remember. Okay, Shift G T. Okay, for the materials to work on the curve type objects, select it first, or select a curve type object in your uh, randomized scene or random flow scene. Shift G, select type. Oh, and then W, special as we know. W, press W, and then convert to mesh, or Control Shift X, apply mesh. This is also the same with apply mesh in random flow. Okay, so now we can Shift G T, select all types, mesh, all the meshes in the scene, and then Control Shift X, create a flow, materials, assign materials, ramp. This will work on multiple objects, but not too much because it will crash Blender. Just maybe a limit of 500 objects. Not 500. 100 objects, I think. Okay, let's try and render this. I pray. Okay, oh, wait. The shader is using vertex color. So let's apply vertex color for this. Black and white. So essentially just gradation of gray. I decrease the saturation to min max to 0, and then just play with the value is 0.7 and then 0.9, and just play around with the random seed of the values. Island. So per separated island faces, and object means for separated objects. Okay. Shift Q. Okay. I think we already added the material. Control B. So it will only render this part here and not the entire thing. This is pretty useful if you have a lot of other elements in your scene, and you can just limit the render to this part here and makes it faster. Okay, so what is that? Let's try and hide the HDRI. I think the original has bigger center part, but I think we made it work. Okay, let's do a quick UV. This thing or not. Let's try and look at the shader. By the way, you can download the cavity the shaders in my Patreon, patreon.com/blendergapi. not the shader, the vertex, the shader node group, sample dirt, the scratches, and also the edge mask. In this shader, however, I'm using sample dirt and cavity dirt, but the effects alone can be, the dirt alone can be largely produced using the sample dirt shader group. You can find this for free in my Patreon. Generated, let's use object. And for objects, we're going to use box instead to have it look right. And let's try again. Okay, let's make the in later videos, I'm going to show you some UV tricks. Most of the time, I don't UV because I use procedural techniques. But only when I need a certain part UV, then I will go to, and then I will be trying to UV that part. Okay, but I have experience in the UV department, the UV mapping department, so don't worry. I used to create model characters using edge to edge technique. It's an ancient technique or box modeling, and after that you have to sculpt the detail, then 0.8. There we go. Something that kind of makes sense with the texture that we're using. Okay. Oh my god. I forgot I'm not supposed to speak when I'm rendering because it distorts my voice because I am using NVIDIA for the NVIDIA broadcast for to cancel out the noise when I speak. And since it's using GPU resource and Cycles is also using GPU resource, they're kind of conflicting. So I forget sometimes that when I render like this, I should speak up because it distorts my voice. But no, sorry if I forget sometimes. So as you can see here, we've replicated the idea that adding a bunch of random shapes, controlled random shapes for this matter, gives us the realism that we need. It doesn't make sense to your eye, but your brain has seen this shape somewhere, probably in Star Wars or in any other sci-fi movies. Your brain has seen it, but since those parts are largely just a bunch of shapes that your brain has decided not to uh, give too much care about or focus on. So essentially, it didn't forget that. The brain didn't forget it. It just didn't. It saved it somewhere. Okay, that your memory can somewhat recall, or so your subconscious. So this kind of trick, there is a term for this. So what we're trying to do is invoke that mechanism because have you seen the box meme? I felt attacked with that, but it is correct. I mean, it does look Sci-fi, even with this. Look, this is the meme that a cube, then you just add a line. Oops. And then essentially it's already sci-fi. Technically, yes, but you still have to do a bit more work to create the illusion that, or to invoke the mechanism that we talked about earlier. And this is already a pretty good base mesh for a sci-fi object. Okay, so that's what we have. We we needed to do for this part here, and this part here is has no problem. So this part here, using that brain trick that I told you. I mean, look at that. Doesn't that look great? I mean, that looks great, and you don't even have to explain it because it's actually it's sci-fi with a bunch of cut lines, some weird extensions and cables that go randomly. So so what are those cables for? Those are for power, of course. And this part has been damaged and fell off, but most of the ramps are still intact. Okay, so let's add. Oh, we can't add. It's not. We use limited dissolve. That's okay. We can use this. We can still use this. This part will not be subdivided because it's in gone. Okay, but we can actually maybe can use just triangulation, and hopefully no word lines shows up on that part. Panels. Whoops. Okay. Restore operator defaults. You can save your presets here using the plus icon. It saves the settings. And you can also use it to restore the defaults of each properties. Now you know. But let's use radio. Subdividing. Yes, it is. Triangle. Okay. So let's use inner. So it gets rid of the top faces and only the panel cut faces will remain. We're going to use the floater trick in cycles. You can use it again. Just layer it, layer the effect. Try and use ratio. It's it looks chaotic, but let's try and use this. Let's join the two. And in visibility and object properties, visibility, turn off in ray visibility, turn off everything except camera. But the effect is too strong. So it makes it looks like it's a part of the surface underneath versus with this on. Okay, let's repeat the process. Also include this link cloud faces. And make the lines thinner. Select the lines. Turn off everything besides the camera and render. There we go. So, so UV tray for this curved surface. Don't have time for this video, but in the next uh, we're going to directly tackle the UV problem, and let's practice on this model. Okay, that's it for this video, and I hope you learned something from my collection of small techniques. Um, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, use the comment sections below or the links in the description. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.